Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head over to Japan once again, and we're going to return to a brewery that's featured on the channel a couple of times before. So I've had some really nice beers from these guys over the last couple of years, a few different styles, but if people were to ask me about this brewery, I would say that they're probably best known for their different kinds of Belgian beer. That's really what they started out brewing, but in recent times they've added a few different product lines, and now they're actually quite diverse in their output. We looked at one of their more recent beers a couple of videos back, and it was pretty damn good. So maybe fair to describe this brewery as being very well rounded these days. But the beer that we're going to have a look at today is a style that I haven't tried from them before. It's a style that I very much enjoy. One that I wish I could review a little bit more often, in all honesty, and a style that's a little bit rare to find from an Asian brewery as well. And this beer is also something of a special occasion beer for this brewery as well. So needless to say, I'm very, very curious to see what it's going to have in store for us. Hopefully it's another good beer. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always, I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we're going to head over to Japan like I said. We're going to go up toward the Tokyo area on the main island of Honshu. We're going to go out to the west a wee bit to Yamanashi Prefecture, and to be specific, we are going to a little town called Kosuge. And Kosuge happens to be home to Far Yeast Brewing Company. So this particular beer is called 1000 Steps. It comes in at 13% ABV, it's a Belgian style quadruple, and this beer was brewed to celebrate their 1000th brew in their own brewery in Kosuge, because these guys of course started out as a gypsy brewery, brewing both in Japan and elsewhere. So yeah, quite cool to find this one here in Hong Kong. In fact, if memory serves me correctly, this beer was bought at the Wine Rack store in Sai Ying Pun, and they had a few different things from Far Yeast and their Aft Trail product line. But this is the one that kind of caught my eye, because I don't get to review all that many Asian brewed quadruples, and as I say, it's a style that I love. I'm a big sucker for the big brown sugary beers, the Scotch ales, the Doppelbocks, the quadruples, and the American barley wines of course too. So yeah, this should be very nice. I've heard good things about it. So let's crack on then and see what this beer is going to have in store for us. The 1000 Steps 13% Belgian style quadruple from Far Yeast Brewing Company in Kosuge, Yamanashi Prefecture over in Japan. So, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links can be found in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Far Yeast Brewing Company before, and we will no doubt add more to that list at some point in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support that you give is massively appreciated, and remember, you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer using the geography tagging system. So just go in there, use the little search bar, put in your hometown, state, county, province, whatever you like. If I've reviewed beers from the area that you search for, they will pop up. Failing that though, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the Japanese playlist along with a number of other things. That's being added to whenever I get the opportunity, of course, which is quite regular these days since I'm now based out in Asia. But do make sure you check out the playlist of beers from other countries as well, because there are some very interesting things on the channel these days, even if I do say so myself. But yeah, let's go on to my brewery notes then, and I'll tell you a wee bit about Far Yeast Brewing Company once again then. So, Far Yeast Brewing were originally founded back in 2011 as a Nippon craft beer, but they later changed their name to Far Yeast Brewing Company in late 2014. So originally the company were based mainly in Tokyo, and the founder is Shiro Yamada, who has a background in business, having worked in the finance sector and also as an independent consultant. But they launched their Kagawa brand of beers back in 2012, and these are Belgian style beers, you know, saisons and things like that. And then they launched the Far Yeast brand of beers in 2014 before deciding to use that as the main name for the company. So they started off as a gypsy brewery, and they brewed most of their beers at other breweries both in and outside of Japan. They were brewing some of their beers in Belgium for a while, from what I remember. But then in 2017, they opened up their own brewery in Kosuge in Yamanashi Prefecture to the west of Tokyo. So this brewery is known as the Genryu Brewery, if I can pronounce that correctly, which translates to headwaters in English, and they source their water from the local Tama River, which is supposed to be very good. You know, they always talk about the quality of nature and natural products in Japan. It's kind of part of the Shinto religion, if you like. But a few months after this, they opened their first restaurant and bar in Shibuya called Craft Beer and Bao, and then in 2019 they added a second restaurant called Yakiniku and Craft Beer Den in Atami, and the following year in 2020 they opened the Beerholic restaurant down in Fukuoka in Kyushu in the southern part of Japan. But that year, they also moved their Shibuya restaurant to Gotanda and rebranded it as Far Yeast Tokyo Brewery and Grill, and they officially moved their headquarters to Kosuge as well, rather than having the main office in Tokyo. But they've also got a bar called Far Yeast Taiwan Craft Beer Gastropub in Taipei too, which is something I'll need to go and check out the next time I'm down there. But as of October 2024, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced 295 different kinds of beer according to Untappd, and they have a few different product lines. Like we said, they have the Kagawa brand, which are kind of like saisons, Belgian style saisons and stuff from what I remember. They've got the Far Yeast brand, which does a lot of different styles of Belgian beer, and then they've got the Trail brand, which is a lot of different kind of barrel-aged beers basically. So yeah, they're all worth checking out. We reviewed an American barley wine from the Trail brand a little while ago, and that was pretty damn good actually. So yeah, we'll need to check out a few more from the Trail brand going forward and see what other kind of Belgian stuff we can get from these guys too. But yeah, that is everything I can really tell you about Far Yeast Brewing Company for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's go on then and we'll chat a little bit about the beer itself. So there is a little blurb from this one on the Untappd page. So I thought I would read this to you because it's quite nice and tells you about the beer. So this is translated by Google, by the way, so maybe a few words not quite right. Japanese is very complicated. But Far Yeast 1000 Steps from Genyu Brewery, that seems to be the full name of this beer according to Untappd. It is a limited edition product commemorating the 1000th brew at our own brewery. As we approach the milestone of our 1000th brew, we once again reflected on our values and strengths as a brewery and thought about what kind of beer we should brew. When our company, which was founded with the traditional Belgian style Kagawa, started brewing at our own brewery, the concept we set was Belgo-Japanese. We returned to our original concept of challenging the latest technology and styles based on the free ideas of Belgian beer and decided to take on the traditional Belgian style head on this time. We used 2.5 times the amount of malt than normal brewing and boiled it for 7 hours, making the most of Far Yeast Brewing's biggest feature, secondary fermentation in a container. And the Belgian yeast used in our standard product, Far Yeast Tokyo IPA, to create a traditional high alcohol beer that has never been brewed at the Genyu brewery before. So yeah, kind of interesting that they use one of their house yeasts in this as well actually. So yeah, 7 hour wort boil, a shitload of malt basically, and then yeah, using their house IPA yeast. This should be quite an unusual quadruple in fact. So yeah, quite curious about this as I say. So I'll just let you have a wee look at the artwork on this one before you open it up. As you can see, it says here just 1000 as you kind of spin the bottle around, which I think is really nice. And I think the little bits of the little bit of Japanese that it has on this one is just saying something along the lines of what I've told you from the Untappd page there. But like we said, 13% Belgian style quadruple. Let's get this guy out into the glass and see how we go. So we'll just be careful with this because sometimes Belgian style beers like to explode a little bit. And one of the things you have to be aware of with Belgian beers is of course that they are quite yeast focused, but very often they will add brew sugar into them, and that's how they you know, they do that for the secondary fermentation, but that's how you get a lighter mouthfeel with a Belgian beer, but the really high alcohol content a lot of time. It's a common thing to do with you know, blondes, bruins, triples and quadruples in fact. But yeah, anyway, we've got the beer out and into the glass, and before the head disappears, we can see that this is poured with just under a half finger of a frothy, I would say kind of fawn, light tan coloured head there. But overall, this beer looks pretty nice. In fact, if we shine the light through it, it actually has quite a sort of stained mahogany colour to it. I think to you guys on the camera, it looks a little bit more along the lines of like a bottle brown type colour. But yeah, it's actually quite sort of chestnutty and things like that. So yeah, kind of chestnutty and actually quite ruby in its colour. It looks very, very nice. But yeah, one or two big bubbles of carbonation sticking toward the side of the glass, a few little ones going up toward the bottom of the head there. But all in all, it seems really nice, this one. So yeah, I like the way that this goes together, in fact. So where do we start with this one? Yeah, remember the colour of your beer depends on a few different things. One, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. Two, length of your wort boil is going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. But any barrel aging that you do and any adjuncts you put into the beer will affect its colour as well. But yeah, you don't have to care about that too much when it comes to Belgian quadruples, although you do get some very nice barrel aged Belgian quadruples, and maybe, you know, depending on what kind of brew sugar you use in these, it can affect the colour as well, because it is a brown beer. But all in all, this one, I would say that it's maybe one of the lighter coloured and more ruby leaning quadruples that I've come across. But yeah, it's certainly not unheard of to have that little bit of a ruby tinge to a Belgian style quadruple. So yeah, nothing unusual so much about the appearance of this one. I think we can leave it at that for this section of the video, and we can go on and have a little look at the aroma then. I'm very, very curious about this. So let's have a wee look at the aroma of this one then. I love the aroma of these beers, and this one's no exception, I will say that. This beer is certainly no exception to that rule. So yeah, aroma wise, this smells really pretty damn good. So what can we say about this then? Yeah, for me, this one, it gives you everything you would want. It smells so nice, this beer. It really smells very, very nice. But yeah, it gives you everything you'd want. You've got the big brown sugary notes out of this. There's a whole variety of brown sugar in this beer. You've got all of that, you've got the breadiness that you want, you've got the little touch of hoppy character, and you've got the lovely big sort of boozy fruits coming out of this. Beautiful smelling beer. We can summarise it like that straight away, but we'll do as we always do. We'll go into it, we'll take a more in-depth look, and we'll just break it down and describe it for you. This is why I love doing quadruples. They're just such complex beers. And this one, it smells a little bit different too. It almost just smells that little bit cleaner, if you like. And I've said this quite often about Japanese beer. And you know, when it comes to Japanese food culture and drink culture, whatever, beer is something that is always supposed to be drinkable. So quite often with Japanese beers, you'll find, yeah, they have the flavour profile you expect, but they're just that little bit lighter in the mouthfeel, or a little bit crisper, because, you know, it's the Japanese thing. They want that crisp drinkability from beer, regardless of what style it is. But yeah, aroma-wise, the way this goes together is pretty damn nice, actually. So yeah, where do we start with this then? The backbone of the beer, as you would expect, there's a good little bit of an almost like rye bready bread crust to this one. So yeah, it's like a kind of sweet rye bready bread crust in the backbone there. Of course, you've got little touches of woodiness and things. But the malty side of this beer is really, really rich. So yeah, rye bready bread crust, a little bit of woodiness. There's maybe a tiny little bit of cracker in there. But yeah, big sweet rye bread, sort of wholemeal, kind of sweet brown bread as well. There's a sort of like, it's almost like a kind of brandy or sherry soaked fruity brown bread coming out of this one too. So yeah, the way that all of that pieces together, I think, is quite is really quite nice too. So yeah, lovely big kind of fruity oily brown bread in this one. And yeah, it really is like a kind of sherry soaked brown bread. It reminds me of the sherry that my gran always used to have a wee drink of on Sundays actually. So yeah, it's got this really like sherry brandy soaked oily brown bread to it. You maybe could say it's a little bit like fruit cakey as well. But yeah, on top of all of that, you start to get the brown sugars out of this one. So the brown sugars, generally speaking, are quite oily in this beer. So you got this lovely big oily brown sugary character coming out of it. Nice little bit of toastiness to the beer too, which I quite like. So yeah, lovely big sort of toasty character. Big oily brown sugary notes in there as well. And yeah, there's a little touch of leatheriness to this one. As I said earlier, when you do that longer wort boil with brown sugary beers such as this, you're going to get that more leathery character. So you've got a wee bit of like toasty brown sugar in there. There's some leathery brown sugar as well. You do have a little bit of that more kind of treacly molassesy note out of this one, but not too much. And there's wee elements of kind of nuttiness to it as well, which I have to say I really quite enjoy. So yeah, that's really, really nice. The brown sugars, you do get a little bit of that brighter caramel out of it, and a wee bit of biscuit, which I think is really nice. And at the back of the nose, you have at the back of the nose, you've got some really nice yeasty characters coming out of it too. So yeah, lovely sort of sweet brown bready character in there, and a little bit of like a kind of more dry crackery brown bread too. So all in all, the malty and yeasty side of this beer is kind of what you'd expect. The other thing I would add is that you have got a little bit, you can smell a little bit of the brew sugar in this one. It's almost like a slightly kind of like grapey, Parma violet-y sort of flavour, or aroma, sorry, that's coming out of it there. You'll find it at the top of the nose. But yeah, on the hoppy side of things, the hoppy side of the beer for me is quite kind of straightforward in a sense. It's got a little touch of earthiness to it. There is a wee bit of herbal character there as well, and yeah, a bit of floral, and mostly a kind of grassiness when we're talking about the green component. Remember, Belgian quadruples are not the most hop forward of beers, but yeah, the fruity side of this one is quite nice as well. So for me, there is a little bit of sharper raisin in there, juicy plum, a slightly drier prune. Of course, a prune is just a dried plum. There's wee elements of, there is like a little bit of a datey note to this one, some kind of sultanas in there too, like dry white green grapes. Yeah, some black currants, and I don't know if I'd go as far as blackberry right enough, but yeah, the way that these two kind of things go together in this one, I think is very, very nice. So yeah, kind of sweeter blackcurrant, and like an oilier blackcurrant, I should say, and a sweeter blackberry, I think too. But it does have a wee element of that kind of phenol-y note to it. But yeah, I will say, generally speaking, I think this has got a slightly sharper nose to it than some of the other quadruples that I've had over the years. Like, a lot of them have a more kind of dry sweetness in the nose, whereas this one just has that little bit of sharpness to it and a bit more of a clean aroma, if that makes sense. So yeah, a little bit of food for thought there with this one, I have to say. But yeah, all in all, beautiful aroma, and as I always say, take a bit of time to just enjoy that before you get stuck into the beer. But yeah, I think this one, I think we're about ready to try this one then. So yeah, this is the 1000 Steps from Genyu Brewery, if we're going to give it its full name. 13% Belgian style quadruple from Far Yeast Brewing Company to celebrate their 1000th brew at their brewery, their Genyu brewery in Kosuge, Yamanashi Prefecture in Japan. Really looking forward to this. Slanja, Skål, cheers, Kampai, and congratulations to Far Yeast, of course. Ooh, that's very good. As I kind of suspected it would be. It's got a little bit of a different vibe to it, but yeah, has got a little bit of a different vibe to it, but I think it is really, really nice. So yeah, it has got a little bit of a kind of sharper fruitiness and things, this one, but yeah, the way it goes together is, the way that this one goes together, I think, is it's really, really nice. So it's a big, big thumbs up from me. Yeah, it gives you the sort of flavours that you would expect from the style, but it's just got a slightly different makeup to it, and I like that. You know, after 4,000 odd beer reviews, you do want things that are going to test your palate a little bit, and this beer certainly does that. So as I say, it has my respect in that particular regard. But yeah, it's very, very good quality. As seen when I first tried the Far Yeast beer, so, you know, I think it was one of the Kago ones. I was like, oh, it's all right. But these guys, I will say, as I've tried the beers more over the years, they've gotten better and better. These guys really know what they're doing these days. But yeah, let's do as we always do with this one and just break it down and describe it more in depth. This is going to be good. So, middle third of your palate then. Let's start there. So, the backbone of this beer, it's kind of, this one I will say, it's a little bit more oily and brown sugary leaning in a sense, which is a strange thing to say about Quadrupel because that's what we expect, but it is more leaning toward that brown sugary side of things, and the dryness, I guess we could say, that kind of dry leathery brown sugar, than the aroma was kind of leading me to believe. But yeah, the if we go to that middle third of the palate then, the backbone of the beer, as I was picking up in the aroma, is that lovely kind of rye bready base there. As you move further forward on the middle third of your palate, you get more of that, you definitely get a little bit more of a woodiness coming out of the beer too, which I think is very, very nice. So yeah, lovely big woodiness to this one there, which comes out more into the aftertaste. There's maybe a tiny little bit of vanilla to that, and just above the kind of rye bready bread crust, there's a very slight smattering of Jacob's cream cracker. So yeah, lovely little bit of Jacob's cream cracker in there, but again, that's very, very minimal. On top of that bread crust, you've got this lovely, big, oily, sweet rye bread, and that really does linger into the aftertaste. Above that, I think you've got more of a kind of, it almost feels like a little bit sponge cakey, like a sort of brown sugary kind of sherry brandy leaning, like brandy soaked sponge cake, something like that. So yeah, oily rye bread, the sort of sponge cakey layer, and then above that you get a layer of a more kind of wholemeal brown bread, but still quite oily and quite sweet, I would say. And within that more wholemeal brown bready layer, you start to get a little bit of nuttiness. There's definitely a wee bit of that going on for sure. So yeah, the way that all of that goes together, I think, is really nice. The bready backbone that this beer has really is lovely, actually. Very oily and very nice and kind of sweet, but it gives you this little bit of dryness into the aftertaste, which is great. But above all of that, you start to get the brown sugary side of the beer, which is really where the quadruple goes. If I remember rightly, the first Abbey quadruple was the I think it was the Brouwerij de Koningshoven one, the Dutch one. The name of those beers has gone right out of my head. I saw them just the other day as well. That's terrible. Dutch Trappist Brewery. That's going to annoy me now. But yeah, that was the very first one, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, so above the bready layer, you get the layer of kind of toasty brown sugar. And then above the toasty brown sugary layer, you've got this big oily circle in the middle of your palate. So the oily circle that comes out of this beer, the backbone of it is the more leathery brown sugar. So you've got the toasty brown sugar, the more leathery brown sugary circle. Then as you move more toward the middle, the dead center of your palate, you have that more treacly molasses sort of thing out of this one. So yeah. But yeah, you've got that lovely big kind of treacly molasses note in the middle of your palate there. So yeah, toasty brown sugar, leathery brown sugar, the treacle molasses. And I'd say that as you go into the aftertaste, you do get a little bit of a more brighter caramelly note out of this one, and maybe just a little bit of a kind of biscuity type character too. But you can certainly feel just a little bit of fruitiness on top of the brown sugar from the brew sugar that's been added into this one, you know, for the secondary fermentation. But I think once we say that, we've covered everything we really need to say about the middle third of your palate in this one. So it leans more toward the brown sugary character later on, but yeah, you have this nice sort of dry, you've got this nice oily breadiness early on in the beer as well. So yeah, the way that goes together is really nice in this one. I like this. It, as I say, really nicely done quadruple. But let's go to the back third of your palate then. As I often say, sweeter flavours come out further forward on the palate, more dry and bitter flavours and stuff come out further back. And generally speaking, the back third of your palate and the middle third of your palate are going to give you very similar flavours, just at different intensities if you like. But yeah, the border region between middle and back third of your palate, you get that nice little bit of bready build up in there. You've got the kind of rye bread in the base, the more kind of sponge cakey type character in the middle, that sort of caramelly spongy cake. And then yeah, you've got the kind of wholemeal brown bread sitting on top of it. But the base of the back third of your palate, yeah, you've got the kind of rye bready bread crust in there, the little layer of cracker. You've got the rye bready layer above that, which is a little bit lighter, taller and more airy. Then you have the kind of sponge cakey layer above that, which again is a little bit lighter, taller and more airy. And then yeah, you've got the kind of wholemeal brown bready layer, which is a little bit lighter, taller, more airy. They've got a little bit of nuttiness there on the back third of your palate too, but above that you can feel the kind of brown sugar, the more leathery, the more toasty layer first, and then the more leathery part of the brown sugar just kind of creeping over the top of that, which again I think is very, very nice. But yeah, all in all, malty side on the back third of the palate feels a little bit lighter, and it does still feel really quite sweet. Like it's got a little bit of a brighter sweetness to it as well, but you still get that wee bit of dryness. But above everything else on the back third of the palate, you've definitely got a wee bit more of a kind of yeasty character coming out of the beer. So yeah, for me, the yeasty side of things, I'd say at its core, it feels like it's got a little bit more of a kind of dry, rye bready character in the middle. But then yeah, as you move further out from it, it shows you a kind of more oily sweet side, and then it's like a slightly toasty, bread crusty character around the edge. So yeah, the yeasty character sits on top of everything else on that back third of the palate. But all in all, again, it's kind of what you'd expect. And the yeasty side of the back third of your palate, as you go into the aftertaste a bit more, it really does show you more kind of dryness and things. But yeah, malty and yeasty side of this beer is really nice. It gets a thumbs up from me. So yeah, on the hoppy side of things then, back corners of the palate, you've got some really nice earthy character in there, so a wee bit of that earthy note. As you move further forward, it's a wee bit woody and a little bit more herbal, and then as you push further forward from that, you get gradually more kind of floral aromaticity out of the beer, which I think is very nice too. So yeah, nice little bit of floral aromaticity there. Then round the front curve of your palate, it's just that little bit lighter and more grassy, I would say. So yeah. So yeah, a little bit of lighter grassiness coming out of this one, which I think is great. And then yeah, you have the lighter grassiness in this one. It is a little touch zesty into the aftertaste too. You could probably age this beer a little bit and it would mellow out even more. Getting a wee bit of boozy warmth down here, generally speaking too. So yeah, a little bit floral on the front corners of the palate, then more kind of grassy and oily around the front curve of the tongue. But let's look at the front third of your palate then and the fruity side of the beer, just to round off the flavour section. So yeah, border region between front and middle third of the palate. Again, you get that nice little bit of bready character in there, the bready build up. You've got the rye bread in the base, the sort of caramelly sponge in the middle, and the more wholemeal brown bready character sitting above that. But then yeah, the base of that front third of your palate is the rye bready bread crust. You've got a wee bit of cracker above that, and then yeah, you don't get so much cake on the front third of your palate. It is more the kind of wholemeal brown bready character than some of the toasty and slightly leathery brown sugars that creep further forward too. But then you've got that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters roll their way out of the beer. So yeah, that's good. So let's look at the fruity side of things with this beer then. So yeah, for me, the fruity side of this beer is interesting because at the back, on top of that little bready build up there, you do get a little touch of the almost kind of the slightly phenol-y type thing, you know, that slightly kind of cough syrupy type fruitiness there. But yeah, there's not quite as much raisiny character in this one as the aroma would have you believe. It has got a little bit of plum, but yeah, more kind of dry prunes and dates and stuff underneath. As you move further forward toward the middle of that front third of your palate, you get a little bit more of there's a little bit more of a, I would say, there's a bit of sultana and there's a little bit of fig. I think that's fair to say. So yeah, you've got plum, prune, there's plums, there's prunes, there is a little bit of date in there, a little bit of sultana, fig in the middle. Then yeah, as you move into the front half of that front third of your palate, it's more sort of like blackcurrant in the base and blackberry on the top. I think that summarises it quite nicely in honesty. So yeah, that gives you your kind of fruity side of the beer. And I will say that at 13%, I can feel this one kind of going to my head a wee bit actually. So probably talking rubbish now, but still, I think we've managed to describe the flavour of this beer pretty damn nicely actually. So yeah, big thumbs up to Far Yeast Brewing Company for this one once again. But yeah, quite happy with this. I have to say that. Happy in more ways than one, we should say. So yeah, a really, really solid quadruple from Far Yeast, and I'm not surprised because I've heard very good things about their stuff these days, and I really enjoyed the barley wine that we reviewed a few videos ago too. But yeah, let's round off the review then with a wee quick look at the mouthfeel. Like I said earlier, this beer is a little bit lighter in its mouthfeel, and a little bit, well, maybe lighter is not the right word, it's a little bit cleaner than some of the other quadruples that I've come across before, but it's still quite a full-bodied beer. I would say this one's kind of at the bottom end of full-bodied, and it feels a little bit clean. The carbonation is quite nice and smooth in this one. The malty side of things, it's a bit dry underneath, smooth and oily in the middle, then you've got that big oily dry sweetness on top, and then yeah, you've got the lovely sort of hoppy character to this one too. I mean, it's not going to blow the head off you in terms of bitterness, maybe 20-ish IBUs at most, and then yeah, you've got this big oily fruity character coming out of the beer too. So yeah, all in all, the way this one goes together is very, very nice, and it gets a big thumbs up from me. Yeah, I really like it, so quite happy with this one, I have to say. So well done to the guys at Far Yeast. They've done a really, really good quadruple here, and I certainly wouldn't hesitate to drink it again, but not too often, because this beer is an absolute beast. It certainly gives you a wee bit of alcohol warmth down here. So yeah, everything you would want from this style and a wee bit more. But it definitely shows you that kind of more light, clean drinkability that you expect of a Japanese craft beer. So yeah, I think we can leave it at that. This was the 1000 Steps to Genryu Brewery, 13% Belgian style quadruple from Far Yeast Brewing Company in Kosuge, Yamanashi over in Japan. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Far Yeast Brewing Company as well, and we will no doubt return to these guys again at some point in the very near future. But until the next time, Slàinte, skål, cheers, and I'll catch you guys a little bit later on. Ciao just now.